That concludes this latest scene from Jenna's tale. Now Allison talks to her character. Allison, you approached talktoyourcharacters.com because you wanted to test the scene you just watched. I'm curious as to what was the concern you had with the scene and how might your characters right now help you resolve that concern?
My biggest concern is that I was not writing the family as nuts as I envisioned them. I mean, nuts is a... what's the word I'm looking for?
Dysfunctional?
Thank you. I really wanted to show them as dysfunctional and completely incapable of being able to relate in a loving, nurturing way. And I just did not know how to write that, quite frankly. Some of the dialogue I see I need to make a little more strident. But I don't know. I still think I'm missing something here. And so...
well, I would like to, Allison, I would like to poll the cast, if you will, and ask your characters one after another, left to right on my screen. If you had to do one thing different with what you just performed, and that question can take any realm, even the ancient realm of Bryn Mawr. If you had to do something different, what would that be? And let's start with Todd.
Well, I'm sorry. Am I speaking as Todd or as the actor here?
You're always speaking in character.
What would I have done differently? Well, I kind of like the choices I've made. I'm not sure who this Cedric guy is and why he has such a grip, but I feel pretty good about myself, pretty good about the choices that I make. You know, Jenna may not understand, but she'll come around.
And Jenna, if you had to make a change to the encounter that you just had that would enhance the scene, what might that be?
Oh, well, I probably wouldn't have gone to my parents' house if I wanted to enhance my life. To be honest, I'm not sure why I felt it was necessary to bring Cedric here at all. If this was such a terrible experience for me, I don't know why I felt compelled to share it with him. I do want him to know me better, so I suppose that means something, but these people clearly don't know who I am, so what's the point?
Dad, your daughter just said that these people clearly don't know who I am, so what's the point? Is that your feelings for your daughter? Do you not know who she is?
Oh, I think I have a pretty good sense of who my daughter is. You know, I mean, she's still kind of a kid. I mean, she may be a grown woman, but she's still young, and she may think that I don't have a sense of it, but let's not forget, just because I'm a parent doesn't mean that I haven't been that age and can't remember it myself.
And Mom?
No, I think I know who she is more than she may realize.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. You see right there.
We can't see you.
Oh. You can see my bobblehead, can't you?
Yes, and we could follow it like a bouncing ball, but we'd rather see your lovely lips. And
yes, sorry. I was just groaning to myself because I'm clearly not getting Dad written.
Would you like to talk to me a little bit more?
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about?
I want to draw you as a little bit colder. You have no idea who your daughter is, as a matter of fact, and she called it.
I see.
And I'm obviously not getting that across. And especially if you think that, well, you know, if you're remembering that you were young once, well, actually, no, you don't care. You care about the fact that she's had this fabulous education, and that doesn't make you look very good because you didn't. and you're just kind of dumbfounded by the fact that she's in love with somebody who's actually gone up the money ladder a little bit, as stated, and I could really use some guidance from you at how to make how to make that come across. You have a hint of cruelty, and you're definitely dysfunctional. And I don't know how to. I'm very unclear as to pulling that off.
Dad, before you answer that question, if I may, would you and Mom, feel free to chime in. Would you be reacting this way to anyone Jenna brought home, or is there an implied dislike of this upper crust, fairly well-versed, worldly gentleman? What is the motivation here? I'd like to hear from Dad and Mom on that.
Good point.
Keep in mind that regarding your question there, if you're asking me from my perspective, well, to someone on the outside, it may not appear as if I understand my daughter. It may appear as if I'm cold, but, well, hey, according to me, I'm not. I think that I'm doing a pretty good job raising her. But if you're wondering how that might look to the outside eye, then I suppose you might want me to try to step outside myself a little bit and look in. But from my perspective, of course, I would probably say that I do understand her pretty well. Hope that adds a little clarity to the situation.
And Mom?
Well, I don't really like meeting people who are clearly successful, because it just really throws my life into a stark perspective. There's a big word that I would never dare to say around Dick. My husband, Dick. Yeah. He calls her Jen of all things, and she hates that, and he doesn't care. And he makes fun of my hobbies.
Just a little pet name, sweetheart.
He's just, for better or for worse.
Oh, is that the way Mom's feeling, Karen?
Jenna, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, I felt as though my dad was being super friendly, sharing his Hummels and all of his hobbies and crafts and strengths with my beloved Cedric, and that was sort of shocking for me. I feel as though I've never seen my dad be quite so friendly, even to me, and to watch him be that friendly seemed sort of out of character. It was confusing to watch him be friendly in that moment, and I think that I started to see my dad as this friendly, jovial guy, and I don't know if that was the best way to show Cedric how terrible they were. And Allison, I felt that way in a lot of the scenes. I was afraid that I was coming off as whiny to Cedric because my parents weren't really at their worst, and I felt as though he sort of had to take my word for how awful they were, because they weren't necessarily displaying it in this exact moment when I brought him home. So I was just worried that all of my complaints weren't being justified in the scene itself, as much as I was talking about how terrible they had been to me. In the scene, I mean, the worst thing that my dad does is call him highfalutin and use my pet name, and while my sister shows up pregnant, that's not really something she's doing to me in the scene. So I sort of felt like all of my complaints and alcoholism were not justified in the eyes of outsiders who didn't know exactly what I've been going through.
Shelley, what are you going through? You just pop up on the scene. What's going through your mind? What are you doing here?
Who was that directed to? I'm sorry. Did you say Shelley?
Yes.
Oh, well, I have been monitoring this household since Jenna was translated into this world, and I have seen some bad shit go down. So it's true that this was not the worst I've ever seen, but between the criticism of her weight and the way that her dad plays grab ass with her, I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. So I was there because I'm always there. I'm always hovering and watching out and noticing this, and would be more active protector.
Cedric, are you willing to forsake her that role? Is that, it seemed like you couldn't wait to get her out of there.
I really couldn't. I mean, it was obviously uncomfortable for her. And while it didn't necessarily seem that it was as bad as she had made it out to be, I'm also not willing to bet, especially with the woman that I love, I'm not willing to bet that she doesn't feel that way and that worse things haven't happened. These people could very well have been on their best behavior for me, especially since I show up in my finest suit, my favorite suit. It's only natural that they're going to try to impress me, or at least put forth a reasonable effort to not be as caustic as they typically are. Her dad definitely has a tendency towards alcoholism. His bar spread, if nothing else, proves that. I'm not a whiskey fan, but I recognize the label of that whiskey. I've seen it in stores. It's not cheap whiskey. But then he's got his very low grade stuff right next to it. It's incredibly clear that even though I didn't see what I thought I was going to see, it still exists. And I did want to get her out of there.
Question for the author, Allison. This is a scene that was fairly heavy on narrative. How do you, in the narrative, work with your characters' dialogue? Are you inclined to want to truncate that narrative a tad, or are you completely at peace with the way the narrative rolls out?
I wouldn't mind shaving off some of the narrative, but at the same time, I'm just having a hard time making the dialogue rich enough to carry the narrative away. I would prefer that the dialogue, show the narrative. Now, that's not always going to be entirely true. I like, for example, the dialogue between Shelley and Cedric. That really worked for me. And to see it in black and white is one thing, but to hear it really told me I got it. And in a very brief moment, we understand that something happened in the very distant past between Cedric and the rest of the realm. That Shelley held him in high esteem. That Shelley always saw him as innocent, and wanted to prove that point by really stepping up and being helpful here. So I like that. I'm sorry, not Shelley, Patsy. But on the other hand, I am really having a difficult time, especially with the Dad and Jenna. And Jenna, quite frankly, I cannot thank you enough for saying what you did just now about, you said two things. How come Dad never treated me this kindly as he's treating Cedric, number one, and number two, so that's important. And number two, you're questioning, I don't know, on some level, I see it as questioning kind of your sanity in a way, because this is what you portrayed to Cedric and the rest of the world. My parents are so awful. My family growing up was so awful. And then we go into this scene that's so completely different from that, the antithesis of that. And I think that's why I've been struggling with this scene so much, because I've been seeing it as her having to go in and do battle one more time with her family, when really their behavior is much better than what she has described. So somehow I need to make peace with that in print. And Ralph, I know you and I can work on that later on. But I cannot thank you enough, Jenna, for your insight that way, because that really helped open up that scene for me. And Todd,
Yes.
you were also very good and clear. You know, you're very fast. You live very fast and loose. You make decisions that are very fast and loose. You and Cedric, in fact, you do know who Cedric is as a wizard. The problem is I did not make that clear enough, so I need to fix that with cleaner dialogue or something that passes between the two of you, a knowing. But I'll figure that one out. As again, Ralph, I know you'll help me with that.
And to that end, characters, I feel free to now step out of character for the moment, or stay in character. It sounds to me that what we have here is a fundamental misinterpretation. Jenna is looking at her family, screened through the eyes of Jenna and her experience with her family. Cedric simply wants to meet the folks, and he brings a very nice bottle with him and flowers. Very nice gesture. If this is a case of misinterpretation, more so than dysfunction, what would you individually, and I'd ask you all to answer this for your characters, what would you individually do, or what you wish you could have done or said that would have really made the case for who you are in the eyes of
Jenna?
Or Jenna? And I don't care who takes that question first.
Well, I could take that as the dad, maybe. Sounds like I probably did have the biggest, as you say, misinterpretation of that. You know, and part of it is I was just looking at it cold. I hadn't looked at that part before because I was just going to be Todd. But to me, as I look at his lines, he does come off as, you know, an okay guy. He seems jovial and nice enough to me. I didn't get the sense that he's cold, that he's not nice, really, just from what I see here on the printed page. You know, had I had more of a backstory about the dad, you know, and known that, it might have been different. But I'm just going off of what I just saw here real quick.
For me to feel as though I was more truthful in the scene, I suppose a line in which I would have said, they're not usually like this, or they must be on their best behavior, would have validated my feelings from the past and let the audience know that they are not the way that they usually are. Or the other way would be, if their attitudes and actions were changed and they were as awful as they were, then I could be giving Cedric some, like, see, there's that thing again, or whatever it might be.
All right.
I have some comments, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
One is, I don't know where anybody is. Where in the house are these people? Where is Mom when Cedric and Dad are talking? The other one is, I think the dad is, you want him to be showing suppressed anger, perhaps?
Yes.
That he's only smiling with his teeth, that there's maybe some kind of tension. I think if Mom's in the room, he can be ordering her around and making rude comments to her. I think the nickname for Jenny should, or Jenna, like I said, it was maybe Jen, which is even more diminishing to her as an adult than simply Jen.
I like that very much. I wrote that down immediately.
Okay. I think that's all I've got here.
I don't know what Jenna's father does for a living, but in interacting with the dad, I got the sense that, he's not even lower middle class. He's very working class, which leads into a whole host of things. His penchant for alcohol, and especially when he keeps referring to me as the chauffeur, and trying to kind of bring up these big words to sort of describe this dichotomy. He's from the working class, and I'm from this Ivy Tower mentality, and I think he instinctively distrusts that.
Implied. Keep in mind, it's an implied Ivy Tower mentality by the household. It is not who you are.
Well, sure, but I showed up in my best suit. I mean, what more can he expect?
And
that bottle of whiskey could have been easily $20-$30.
Right.
So
can I jump in as the dad?
Oh, that's cool. That the gift itself might have been an insult.
Mm-hmm.
Except that he really liked the liquor.
I think Dad had a comment.
Yes, Vic.
Yeah, since you spoke about him just now, I went and looked over the script again, his lines, and I can see now where it would come off the way you were talking about. It's just, I didn't know that. But, looking at just the lines themselves, I can see where that can go either way. And I think these lines will work for him as long as it's somehow established at the beginning. And again, I was playing Todd, so if there was something about that with the dad, I didn't see it beforehand. And so to me, when I read the line about calling Cedric a chauffeur, I thought it was more, I'm a regular guy. I know who's this, fancy dandy over here, like almost as if he was dressing better. But now that I hear you talk about him, I guess I was actually, I'm talking down about him as if a chauffeur is beneath me, like I'm above him, and that's some kind of a low man's kind of a job. But I think these lines will probably work just as long as, like I said, as long as that's made clear. I guess I'll stop before I keep repeating myself again.
So just to let everybody know, it is 5:25. I'm not sure what our stopping time is. If it's 5:30, then we have 5 minutes. I also wanted to throw in my 2 cents here as far as the dad. I think it's well written. He comes off as very, I want to use the word condescending.
That's exactly what I want him to come off as.
I felt like he was very condescending.
But it's condescending kind of in a reverse way. It's not like he's putting himself above the other person and trying to bring them down, or not putting himself above the other person and treating them as lower. It's more like he perceives a threat to his virility, to his manhood. Mm-hmm. He's the king of his castle. He perceives that threat, so he tries to bring the other person down. Instead of saying, that the suit is some great job, it's a chauffeur, because he dresses like one. I mean, all he's missing is his chauffeur's cap, right? So that's how I saw Dad, and part of that is keeping his family in check. He is the king of his castle, and no little uppity girl of his is going to grow up. She's always going to be Jen, So that's how I perceive it from the lines that I read.
Good, thank you.
I just took up 3 of those 5 minutes.
That makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense, actually. We are at the well beyond the hour, so that concludes another Characters on Demand session at TalkToYourCharacters.com. Allison, thank you for participating, and thanks to your characters for bringing your manuscript scenes to life. We hope you found this session useful in the further development of your novel. And now, thank you, the audience, for joining us. If you would like to test scenes and dialogue from your novel in development, we invite you to visit TalkToYourCharacters.com. TalkToYourCharacters.com. It's something to talk about.